Namo Mirabutsu. Welcome, 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 welcome to to my channel, wherever you are, whenever you are, in whichever realms of existence you are, whatever mind states you're in, whatever conditions you're in, you're welcome to my channel. And welcome to this very special episode of Butsuzo, Butsuga, Butsudo. It's my very great privilege and honor to present and interview a very fun, interesting man of depth and intensity, award-winning filmmaker and man of action, Yujiro Seki. Welcome, 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 as you say.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Scott.
My pleasure, my pleasure, my privilege. I've been wanting to do this actually literally for years. I've thought about reaching out to you and contacting you, and I just never had my channel to the point where I could, you know what I mean, do that. So I just, you know, now's the time. So and it's yeah, so yeah, just yeah, obviously Yujiro is the creator of the very great film Carving the Divine, and is which was a very, by all accounts, very heroic effort on his part to bring that together. And so that's kind of what I'd like to I have a kind of theme that I'd like to kind of suggest for our interview today. I have this sense, listening to some other interviews I've seen you do and things I've read about you and watching some of your videos on Carving the Divine. Oh yeah, I wanted to mention that too. It's not, you know, Yujiro hasn't just created the Carving the Divine film. He's also created a very excellent YouTube channel called Carving the Divine TV with all kinds of content. It's a veritable treasure trove and it's good for people who to have no knowledge of Buddhism or Buddhist art, or are, you know, have some knowledge or interest in Buddhism already. Either way, it's a very, very good channel for people to delve into. And you also have a blog that you've created, so it's not just you have a whole sort of a whole complex, I guess you'd call it, of media around Buddhist art that you've offered to the world and created and continue to create through Carving the Divine TV. So, so what, like I said, what I'd like to do is, I have a sense in this interview. What I'd like to do is, I have a sense from what I've listened to of your previous interviews, as I said, from things I've read, from things I've heard you say in the different episodes of your channel, is that the process of you pursuing filmmaking has the process or causes and conditions of that, if you like, have led you on a path where you were kind of, in a way, initiated into, cultivated into Japanese culture more deeply as you got closer and closer to, you know, throughout your life, even starting in high school with that film project. We'll get to all that, and then through your whole journey to doing Carving the Divine. It seems like you've been kind of, it's cultivated you. That process has cultivated you kind of into aspects of Japanese culture, and as a as a Japanese man, you know, cultivated you into that pursuit of, you know, that Japanese pursuit of perfection in one's work, in one's art, in one's occupation, and of oneself. And that's kind of what I see, especially your pursuit of this project, Carving the Divine. It feels like, to me, it seems like it's cultivated you. You know, you make points in various places that you try to let the bushi speak for themselves, let the craft speak for itself, not have an agenda for your documentary. And it seems like the opposite has happened. The project itself has cultivated you rather than you trying to manipulate the project, if you see what I mean. So anyway, that's kind of what I had in mind. So if you want to kind of start with, you know, wherever you want to with your very unique upbringing, your, you know, and how your perspective changed when you started to pursue film and came to the States and all of that. So yeah, thank you. Hopefully that's
Well,
not too much of a context.
that's a very huge topic to address. But first of all, I think people are very sick of hearing carving the divine for at least 6 years by now. First 6 years or 5 years, yeah, I was focusing on creating the film. So there was no such a thing as a social media. And I call myself social media dinosaur. I frankly didn't have any idea of social media, and I felt like it's a waste of time. And to some extent, nowadays I feel it's a waste of time. It's consumed so much out of me. And if it was not for carving the divine, I would never started social media. Probably I would have had like a Facebook or something and just say something there and there, and nothing important. I don't like putting pictures of food on my social media. It's kind of lame to me. I don't know. It's just I was a very private person. But things had changed because I created Carving the Divine. And after I created it, I realized nobody cared, really. Nobody cared. Yes, of course, some people cared, a few people cared, but the people had frankly no idea why I was pursuing the documentary about the woodcarvers, Buddhist woodcarvers. Why don't you do something like Justin Bieber or something, right? Documentary. Everybody, it's a popular topic and you can make money and all this. But, I was young and naive, and I had I guess I must say, pure intention of making something that beautiful and profound. That means something to me and something to my people and something to the world. Very naive. I didn't really think about the financial aspect. Film is a business and you got to make money. And, a lot of us filmmakers have this like a naive idea of doing something beautiful and forget about the business aspect of it. And forget about who would be interested in watching our films. Because in our mind, our film should speak to everybody, right? You want to make everybody happy. You want to engage everybody, and we want our works to be a masterpiece for everybody. But that's not really true. Even like one of the most well-known films, popular films. Often there are people who like it, who don't like it. So, this is a very naive concept. But, besides that, really, nobody cares about the Buddhist sculptors of Japan. But I, work on it for 6 years, and I felt like, this is pretty decent. In my mind, it was pretty decent. And I thought, well, maybe it's time for me to take this social media thing very seriously. So I started doing like a bunch of stuff. First, I started doing like a YouTube show called Carving the Divine TV, which is about the basic concept and the history of Buddhism. And I wanted to do something like a 10 minutes show every time. Every show is 10 minutes or 15 minutes, and at most like 20 minutes to talk about Buddhism in a digestible way. And it's almost like a drill. Somebody who doesn't know anything about Buddhism can watch it from the beginning to the end to get some idea of Buddhism, some idea. Of course, sometimes, I get criticism from many people that this is not deep enough, or this is not good enough, or this is wrong and everything. But, come on, if you want to talk about some big concept. Let's say talk about samsara or something, and let's talk about it in 10 minutes. We can try, but I mean, but we gotta start someplace, because often what practitioners and the scholars misunderstand is like everybody is at their level. They think they can throw like a bunch of like difficult words and people can just get it. I just find that that's impossible for newcomers, and the people are often discouraged about learning Buddhism because it's just too huge of a topic. And as we go inside of a Buddhism and more and more, you appreciate so much. Like, wow, this is such a world, such a wisdom. So wonderful wisdom of humanity. But until you get to the point to, I think it's really important to have some basics, some easy to understand version of Buddhism. So that was the initial thought about Carving the Divine TV. On top of promoting my film, Carving the Divine, Buddhist Sculptors of Fun, I wanted to create a good show. I wanted to do it at 100%. And, after doing it for a while with a scholar, I've realized, wait a minute, maybe this is only one-sided idea of Buddhism, one-sided research about Buddhism, and there are people who actually practice Buddhism. So why can I bring those people to our show and have both sides? Because when you watch a show about Buddhism, it's either from the scholastic perspective or practitioner's perspective. So it's very difficult to figure out what's going on and trying to see what works for me, what works for you. And I wanted the practitioner's episode to be a little bit deeper than a regular episode. So, after I invited all the practitioners, the show already took off. Before it was kind of, it was okay, but it was not as involved as the practitioners episode. And it seems like people appreciated me having many important people in the industry. Then I started inviting the scholar, art historian, Mark Schumacher, to talk about statues.
Yeah.
And, that was actually the later part of that show, because, again, to appreciate statues fully, it is kind of important to understand Buddhism a little bit. You cannot really appreciate the statue if you don't know anything about Buddhism. You can see it as a beautiful art, and fierce looking deities, and thinking about are they God? I mean, are they are they? Are they Buddha? He looks so angry. I thought Buddha was peaceful. These kind of things that you might laugh, but I mean, most of the people who don't know anything about Buddhism, they have no idea. I thought the Buddha was just sitting down underneath a tree. So yes. And while I was doing that, we started the blog series, Buddhism, and Buddhism is about the appreciation of Buddhist statues. I invited the blogger David Burbley. He's a sculptor, and we can get a different perspective, because he's not a scholar, he's not Buddhist practitioners. He is a sculptor who truly loves Buddhist statues, and he from his Western perspective, he breaks down the statues, how to appreciate statues, how techniques, and everything. A little bit of history we go over, but each blog entry is very digestible, very easy to read, filled with pictures. So, because again, Buddhism is a little bit difficult to go into prior to that, because there are so many deities, there are the
So many
class
aspects.
of deities, and
Mhm.
you know, if you don't know anything about it, you get really overwhelmed. But again, once you get to the other side, you get surprised. Wow, that's our ancestors were thinking, trying to come up with some system, you know, that would help us going through difficulty in life and beyond. So that's like the basic idea. I talk like I know what I'm talking about, but you know, actually I don't.
I think you do. I think you know more than you let on. But I understand the self-deprecation. living in the UK for almost 20 years. Anyway, so yeah, you've created you know, the way you've approached this project has been in a very kind of, you want it for the everyday person to be able to see this and appreciate it, you know, and so it's very wise. It's quite very wise to create the blog and create the your YouTube channel in the way you have, in the, you know, the small, you know, 20 minute, you know, show, you know, episodes, so that, you know, it relates to people's kind of the modern attention span, and also it keeps it very simple, so that if somebody knows nothing about Buddhist art or Buddhism, they can appreciate it. They can come in and learn about it. I think it's quite, you know, and that you've mixed in also. Then you brought in the practitioners and the scholars and things. I think it's a great mixture of things, so that people from all kinds of worlds and angles can appreciate it and learn about this.
And the show got
fantastic.
longer and longer too. The show got longer and
Yeah,
longer.
yeah. Well, when I started to watch the when with the interviews, with the practitioner interviews, that's when I started to watch your, you know, I discovered your channel through, you know, searching for, you know, when I was searching for different, you know, things about different types of Buddhism that I was wanting to learn about or deepen. And I came across your channel I was like, oh my gosh, you know, and then I just started from there. I delved deeper, but yeah, no, it's great.
Practitioners episodes are really good because
Yeah.
you know, sometimes reading is not enough, right? You know, because your reading is wonderful, but you know, sometimes people who actually practice the tradition has a lot more knowledge and experience than you have. No, I'm not talking about you, but you know, you in general, you know,
Yeah.
for including me. You know, I might read something and I think, so I understood Zen Buddhism or something, Soto Zen, I got it, right? But when you talk to a practitioner, you realize, wow, I didn't know anything about it, you know? That's that's the beauty of it. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. Yeah, and this is really, I mean, this seems like this is your life work. You know, coming through the carving the divine is almost kind of, it's what you want. It's what you want to. It was, you know, you talked about how you know, at one point you really, you know, you with film, you wanted to really create something meaningful and special to your culture, to the world, to yourself. So I'd like to take a step back. Speaking of your life, I'd like to take a step back and kind of just quickly kind of go through what kind of brought you on this, you know, what started you on this journey.
Before
So
you do that, can I just to tell you
yeah,
one more
sure.
thing?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, of course.
So this is a conclusion to what we are talking about. So I have a Carving the Divine TV, which is about the Buddhist, the history of Buddhism and art of Buddhism, you know, basic concept of Buddhism, right? And yeah, I have a Buddhization blog, which is how to appreciate Buddhist statues, right? You know, they are kind of, you know, on the left-hand side and right-hand side, and in the middle is Carving the Divine. Because what's missing is like we can study about the theory all day long. That's no problem. We can study about Buddhism all day, every day. You know, that's no problem. We can read about how to appreciate statues every day, all day. Then maybe you want to go to like a museum or something and see Buddhist statues, and you have a new appreciation and there and there, and you go to school and maybe your professor talks about Buddhism, and you can understand the Buddhism better, or you can go to temples and you can learn about the Buddhism in that way. But what's missing is like the people who make those statues. And without that, it is really difficult to put the dot together.
Yes.
When you watch the documentary Carving the Divine and watch my shows and go to museums and talk to the practitioners, things should make more sense.
Exactly.
Of course, it doesn't mean everybody has a luxury and time to do all this. You can just watch documentary, of course. You can just watch the YouTube show, or you can just read a blog. But documentary will provide something you are not going to get anywhere else. It's just you want.
Yeah.
And you for people who are connoisseur of Japanese culture, and they think they know it all. Wait to see once you see Bushi culture. So my purpose of doing all this is I want everything to make sense in the end. I don't know how much it's going to make sense, but you get feel a lot closer to statues if you watch the film and go to museums, for example. Go to maybe go to your university and talk to your teachers, and he talks about the statues. You feel a lot closer to statues. It's just the will. So yes.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. There's something, and then on top of everything, there's something very, so if you can get it, wherever people can come into it is good. But there's an aspect also of Buddhist statuary that it's something unspoken. Do you know what I mean? There's so much meaning just from seeing it. Whether people are conscious of that or not, there's something happening when they, interact, I guess, if you like, for lack of a better word, with a statue, when they see a statue, wherever they see it. I think there's something very unspoken and even unconscious that's happening, and very, so it's, that's an important aspect as well. But I just think it's a great opportunity. You're provided such a unique and great opportunity to delve into this whole realm of Buddhist art and Buddhist culture and Buddhism itself. It's a very unique doorway into all of that. So yeah.
Well,
so thank you.
Oh, yeah.
I want to thank you personally. Thank
you. So also, there's something ineffable, right? So I don't want to use the word enlightenment because it's kind of cheapens everything. So there's something called enlightenment we have to achieve. The Buddha achieved whatever. I think to me that's a very superficial understanding of the whole tradition. But for the sake of argument, there's an enlightenment, because that's how people start learning about Buddhism, right? Well, enlightenment, it's a state of tranquility, that kind of stuff, right? So and also I think there's something like that for every spiritual tradition. We try to explain everything by a language, words. If somebody's eloquent and be able to explain things beautifully, for some reason we think we understand everything. But unfortunately, when it comes to spirituality, there's another realm of thing, which is cannot be explained by a language itself. And when you realize that, when you study this kind of things, so you realize, well, language is the kind of low form of so if you know what I mean. So, but
yes.
That's why, your Shingon Buddhism, there's a different kind of art,
Mm.
like a mandala statues, and trying to like demonstrate this concept of something ineffable,
Mm.
not be able to explain by a language. So
Exactly.
that's one of the reasons why statues are important. So I don't know, I kind of digressed, but
that's fine. It's fine.
That's one of the reasons why really when you watch my documentary, what's the point of me trying to explain to you what it's all about? I could like easily throw a narration and say explain everything to you. That which is like most of the people who make documentaries do. Just to get the bunch of shots and just put the narration over it and trying to convince you to believe in something.
Mm.
It's almost like a college essay. There's an introduction, there's a body and a conclusion, and they're trying to convince you,
A certain premise,
something.
a certain premise. Yeah.
Yes, that's a certain premise. Yes. So this kind of documentary, the documentary that I made is the hardest form of documentary, either you agree or not, because again, I cannot make anything up. Of course, there's always subjectivity in making anything. There's always narrative in everything, as long as the people make it. But I try my best to show the essence of the culture,
Yes.
rather than my feelings or my opinion in it, because it's a 1,400-year-old culture. Who am I to tell people how I feel and what to think? I just want people to watch it and feel it and come up with their own conclusion about it.
Yeah, let it speak for itself. It certainly has earned that. It's a long, unique, amazing tradition that certainly deserves to speak for itself, I think. And I think that's what I love about your approach, is to let that happen, not to, as you try to keep it as much agenda free as you could, which is very unique as well from other most other documentaries and films. There's some kind of, especially these days, the past several years in particular, there's strong agendas kind of in the whole idea of the documentary themselves, and opinions, and trying to get a message across, get messaging in there, and flood the zone, as it were.
Right. Well,
but your approach is like the opposite of that. Your approach is let the subject speak for itself. Let the try to keep yourself out of it. So which I think is fantastic. As much as you could.
But it's just it's a funny story, but it just drives some people crazy. Some people, for some reason, they cannot take it. They're very used to be guided. Based on my experience, this documentary will work for most of the people. I've watched that happening, but sometimes it doesn't work. There's no such a thing as 100%. And they feel there's no enough information. They think, they think there should be a guide or narration. But if I do that, I'm not going to do the service to the art. And art should be profound. The art should speak for itself, and to be able to experience that, you should be open-minded, and to be able to explore yourself, rather than be explored by something or somebody. In a sense that I would feel really uncomfortable sometimes some people operating the world of right or wrong. Because there's always two sides of the story, right? And there could be such a thing as a universal concept of justice. There could be, of course. I don't disagree with that. And many people try to make something that has a good intention and try to make the world a better place. I don't disagree with that. But often, we, including on myself, trying to prove to other people that I'm right and that other people wrong. And even Buddhists who claim to be Buddhist, it seems like they cannot get out of this idea of right or wrong. And as long as we are human, there are always right or wrong, and there could be both right or wrong. I heard in India, people say, if you are right, it doesn't mean I'm wrong. I mean, both of us could be right, or both of us could be wrong, or maybe
there's that
in the middle.
There's an Indian saying, not this, not that. I can't remember what the Sanskrit or the Hindi is, but it's not this, not that. Anyway, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
No, that's beautiful. So that's the point. So and I know we all have our opinion. I want to be a little bit controversial. If you like vaccinated or non-vaccinated, or if you like Biden, or if you like Trump, right? So people have a particular opinions about it, right?
But, very strong, yeah, very strong opinions.
But when you watch Carving the Divine, you can step aside and forget all that, and you can experience, you can have a human experience, which is common among us.
Yes.
Regardless of opinion, what kind of opinion we have in this world. So that's another reason I don't want to make it as this film as a college essay. I really don't care what I think or what I believe in. I really don't.
I think it's great that it's something that it's for when you mentioned there that any human, it's important, it's or anybody, the ordinary human, anybody can appreciate this and experience it through your film, through your documentary. That's what's great. That's, in Buddhism, there's a tradition of that, of types of Buddhism that focus very strongly on the human realm and the ordinary human. And those are the types of Buddhism that I would say most affected me or appealed to me in the end, and reached me more, more in the end. And I feel like coming back to, you kind of staying out as much out of the film, your own opinions and agendas out of the film as much as possible. I kind of feel like, to use a Zen phrase, your documentary is almost a finger pointing at the moon, as it were, about this subject, about the subject matter. It doesn't, it lets it speak for itself, as I say. You get to have the meaning without all the words and agenda, and you get to experience the meaning for yourself of this tradition, of the power of it, of the meaning of it, of the significance of it, of the uniqueness of it, all those things. So.
Well, that's at least that's the idea, that's the ambition. So either that works or not is up to the viewer, right?
Exactly.
Maybe
exactly.
this guy just talks so big and like that. It's a disappointment once you watch the documentary.
Exactly. Right. Well, can we switch gears a bit? A little bit.
Okay.
You mind?
Please.
Yeah. Oh, well, actually, one other thing I wanted to say about the, with the art speaking for itself, or something coming from it that's beyond words. Well, this is something I wanted to raise with you at some point. was the word bushi itself. One of the translations, or one of the kind of main translations of that word originally was Buddhist teacher, as I understand it. And I think it's kind of interesting because, and that Buddhist, carver or sculptor came to be known as a bushi, because as I understand it, part of the reason for that Buddhist art and sculptures were used for was teaching, almost a visual aid, if you like, by certain schools of Buddhism, by certain teachers. And so in a sense, I feel like someone carving or a sculptor of these Buddhist, images, these Buddhist statues is in a way a teacher. Do you know what I mean? Bringing this into the world for someone to, have that experience. Anyway, that's just a thought that occurred to me as I, delved into all this on my own, but through your channel, through various things. But what are your thoughts on that? Do you have any what's your, or do you
Well, I
not
think
have?
it's nice. I haven't really thought about it very, very carefully like you do, that the origin of the word and everything. But in a sense that, yeah, the people who can make statues can teach people lessons eventually, be able to help people to overcome difficulties in life and beyond. Part of the reason why Buddhism has been here for 2,500 years, and also the Buddhist statuary has been in Japan for 1,400 years, is because there's a need for it. It's amazing. So many governments rose and fell, and these statues just remained. It's crazy.
Yeah. That art, this tradition continued through all these changes. I mean, there was from like early 600s, right? Early 7th century was when it sort of become established, and then and it continued just till today through all kinds of upheavals and change.
Right.
They had funding, then the next century they didn't have funding, then they moved into the temples, and then there's all these changes, but the tradition went on, even though some of the situations that arose, it's amazing that it survived almost, that the tradition, that just, it just speaks to the power of it. All these, the social and the historical upheavals that happened, and it still continued. It's still, and one thing in that history, an interesting thing, coming back to this thing about the Buddhist, Buddhist teacher, Bushi meaning Buddhist teacher. At one point, some of the Bushi became monks, or given the title, of monk or teacher at one point, or officially. They were actually even if honorifically, they were actually made full sort of monks. Full, they might not have had the scope to actually teach or do certain duties of Buddhist priests or monks, but they had that title. They were part of that community in that way, which is interesting, I thought, as well, and I think fitting, again, for the reasons we were just talking about, because that is a teaching, when you bring that into the world. And I think even the process of it is kind of teaching, the whole process, not only the master and the student, but just the culture of it itself, the everything about it. So, and speaking of which, I think it's had a massive impact on your life. Like I said, I started out this interview by saying it. I get the sense that this project and filmmaking have really cultivated you. It's cultivated your life and your mind and character and heart and things into, more and more deeply into Japanese culture, because you talk about in a couple of your interviews, you talk about how you didn't know in a sense you didn't know you were Japanese until you moved to America. And you didn't appreciate the very kind of unique, amazing kind of the childhood that you had with your dad being a Buddhist, a Butsudan maker, and being around all these Buddhist sculptures and temples and things, and that family business until later on. So do you want to talk about that a bit for the kind of the remainder of our time?
Yes, yeah. So like, I was born in Japan, and I was born as a son of a Buddhist outdoor maker, a Butsudan maker, as you said. And ever since that I was little, I was surrounded by Buddhist objects, including furniture, statues, incense, and all kinds of stuff. And my dad had a relationship with many temples, and I went to all over the places. And we met a lot of people in the industry. And when I was a little, it was just a family business. There was nothing to it. I didn't appreciate it at all. It was just there. And fast forwarding, when I was in high school, I was doing a theater, and I fell in love with the process of filmmaking. It's the poison of filmmaking I ran into. Horrible stuff. There's no money into it. It's just people dream about making a living by filmmaking.
Exactly.
Horrible thing. I would not ever recommend anybody to be going into the industry, but that's beside the point. So
Rank somewhere in there in the three poisons, I'm sure. Yeah.
I made my first film, like a detective film, a comedy detective film, like a feature film, and fell in love with the process. And I was a very, very young high school student, so I wanted to study cinema more, film more. So I went to the United States. I decided to go to the United States. I went to the university, and I got a film degree, and started working in Los Angeles in a design company. And it was a good job. It was a very good job. Gave me a lot of experience, met a lot of people. But it was just I was making videos for business. I was just making videos to make a living, pay the bills. And when I was in high school, I wanted to make the movie that inspires people. And that dream was gone someplace. And I was just making videos because I need to pay bills. So I really got sick of it. Even though there's nothing wrong with making videos to pay bills. Some people do that, and this is an honorable job. But I was be able to give up the dream of making at least one work in my lifetime that could, as I say, could mean to me, mean to my people, mean to the world. And I decided to not to work anymore, at least in that company. Many things happened, and I just decided, okay, I'm gonna just pursue at least making one work in my life that could mean something. So, and I was thinking about what can I do that I can make a contribution to the world that is unique to me. And I realized, as I said, before coming to the United States, I was in Japan, and I was Japanese, among Japanese. So means I was never conscious of the fact that I was Japanese, because everybody else was Japanese. Who cares, right? So people talk about, I'm Japanese, but it doesn't mean anything because, everybody was Japanese. But when I went to the United States, in the melting pot world, I realized, oh, wow, I was actually Japanese, because people constantly remind me of the fact that I'm Japanese. And I learned different cultures from from different people. And it was very eye-opening for me. And, and I re-examined the fact that I am a Japanese, and I thought about my upbringing, and I realized the way that I grew up was very unique. Not to only Japanese, but to people around the world. And I wanted to make something that could mean something, make a contribution to the world. And I found the subject matter, Buddhist sculptors of Japan, is very unique. And it's a 1,400-year-old tradition. And I wanted to bring that to the world. But what I didn't realize that that was such a vast subject matter. You could tackle by so many different directions. Sometimes I get to people that maybe you could talk about the history more in my documentary. But I was like, you know what? I can talk about history in some other places, but that's not really unique. I mean, you can talk about the history of Bushi, no problem. And I can make that kind of documentary fairly quickly as long as I have a budget and everything. But Carving the Divine is about the people who make those sculptures in the 21st century, who's been doing it. That tradition has been around for 1,400 years, and it's a very authentic presentation of this tradition. And frankly, it took me 11 years to come this far, right? 6 years to make a first version, and another 5-6 years to do a promotion and social media to let people know how cool this subject matter is. And from the 6 years to 11 years, I slowly even perfect the film. I perfect the music, I perfect the sound. When you watch the movie now, you don't hear the noise anymore. Before there was a lot of noise because of the documentary, and the unwanted noise is in the documentary, and there's a professional who can clean up the noise. And it took so long. And what people don't realize is it's a 98 minutes documentary, but it doesn't mean it takes 98 minutes to make it. And promoted that I literally destroy my life over it. 11 years, you should be building your future, right? You should be building your 401k, and you should get a house and cars, and get your family raised and everything. But I decided not to do all that. So and sometimes people don't get it, that's fine. But if you give Carving the Divine a chance, it will give you the experience that you won't get it anywhere else. That's, I guarantee, always the people. People always say, well, what about Hollywood film? What about Avatar? Yeah, you can go there and watch the film with Avatar, Spider-Man, and everything. You can get the, unique experience, but you cannot get Carving the Divine experience from Avatar or, Spider-Man. You just can't.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, it's totally something totally different, totally unique, something people will not, it'd be like nothing anybody's ever really experienced. I think personally, that's my own response or reaction to it. But it seems like you have certainly suffered for your art, I think. In deep dukkha, you have suffered for your you have suffered for your art, my friend.
Oh man.
It was a heroic effort. That's what I just see. This is a excruciating heroic effort. When something drove you, what was it that drove you about this? What was it that the meaning, those three, something meaningful to you, meaningful to your culture, meaningful to the world? What was it? What drove you to keep going? for that, for this whole 11 years to keep?
Well, when I first finished the film, like first version, about like 5 years ago or something now, 5-6 years ago now. And yeah, at that point, to be honest with you, I really didn't know if the work was any good anymore. I really didn't know, because I watched it so many times. As a filmmaker, an editor, you work on it so much and you just don't get if it's any good anymore. So that's why you need some other people's opinions. That's why you do a test screening, right? In the film industry, because it's really difficult to be objective toward our own work, because we want our work to be good, right? That's like of course, we don't want our work to be mediocre, and we want to believe that our work is one of a kind. All of us, almost all of us. That's why we make film. But the reality is that sometimes it's not really true. Like maybe, I mean, for other people, it's not good at all, and maybe it's not that great. And throughout the process, I had an advisor, story consultant whom I talked to all the time, and hey, what do you think? Or, if this makes sense, or all this. And sometimes he told me some brutal truth. This is not working at all. And I was like, why it's not working? It's working. But when I think about it later, it is not working. So it's not really I'm a creative genius behind who did all the work, because in reality, it's really difficult to be subjective. I'm a objective. I mean, it's difficult to be objective. I'm a cinematographer, right? And I got this like a beautiful shot. I was like, oh, this is so killer shot. It's beautiful. And this my advisor told me, oh, this does not contribute to the whole overall story of the story. You should get rid of it. I was like, why do I have to get rid of that? This is the greatest shot ever. And I was like, later when I think about it, I was like, nah, you're not really doing anything. I guess I got to get rid of it. That it happened all the time.
It's like slicing away pieces of yourself. It's like, just hack off another finger, another limb. Yeah, okay. Pull some teeth.
Exactly. That's how I felt. And the first version that I created was 3.5 hours long, right? And who's gonna watch the 3.5 hour long movie documentary? So I had to cut it down to 98 minutes, which is actually the longest tolerable length for documentary in general. For regular feature, it's 120 minutes. I know some people like I heard like Drive My Car or something, Academy Award winning like a film of last year. It was like 3.5 hours long or something. Don't quote me on this. Somebody told me that. I haven't watched it yet. But you know what? If the film is 3.5 hours, I think it would discourage a lot of people not to watch it. You know what I mean? If it's really great work, if even it's a great work, 3.5 hours long, can you watch the film without going to the restroom? 3.5 hours? That's a big challenge, right?
Exactly. Has to be a mini series if you're gonna go.
Yeah,
go that long. I think. Anyway,
yeah, exactly. So when I first made it, I didn't know if it was any good or not. And I had an opportunity to show it to a few places. I mean, Nibe Foundation, in Research Foundation in Los Angeles. And also I showed it in a Buddhist Church of America, Orange County. And, I had amazing feedbacks. I was like, I saw people's eyes, and people like really mesmerized by it, and people like, wow, this was so beautiful. And a Buddhist Church of America bishop, Marvin Harada, he watch it, and he was like, in the beginning, he was like, let me see what you got. Like he was kind of skeptical a little bit. Let me see what you got. And when he
I
watched
could
the
imagine him being
film,
that way.
and he was like, oh, it was good. That's what he told me, right? And I've shown it to many places after that, and it just film does something which I cannot see anymore. Does it make sense? I cannot see it anymore. And of course, I can see it. See it as okay, this makes sense. This makes sense. This continuity is good. Okay, this makes sense. The music, flows well. Because I pay attention to everything very, very carefully. Music is original music. It's not template music. The music for each scene is made for each scene.
So important.
And
So
composed
important.
by the award-winning composer, film composer. And we work on it very, very seriously, and everything should come together. That's what I think. But when you show it to other people, that's completely different story. We have this old wild imagination of, oh, this is going to be great, but the reality is it might not work. But it seems like it's working everywhere. Even the people who don't care about carving, who don't care about Buddhism, I show it in a film festival in Dominican Republic. And those people, most of them, they were very devout Catholic, and they say thank you God, and they don't care about Buddhism. And even those people saw something in it. And to answer your question, at some point, it is not about if I want to continue it or not anymore. Does it make sense? Deep inside, I wanted to quit. Between you and me, like
yeah, I've heard you say never again, never again.
What's the point of doing all this? Like going to all the festivals and just to destroy my health and just to, I think I already made the film. I think that's good enough. So, but I've been to many festivals, and now it's I was be able to actually release the film. All of this is because of people's feedbacks. If people have told me this is something, that's something different, this is something unique, and they were deeply touched by it. I hope, I wish they would have not lied to me so that I would have quit.
Don't tell me these good things. Don't tell me.
Yeah.
It's like the Taoist sage running from the people bringing him treasures. Thieves, go away. Anyway.
Yeah. So you asked me what kept me going is personally, I think as people have told me they are touched by it, and the film influenced them in positive way. Yeah. So I mean that's the greatest pleasure for the filmmaker, right? That we give up all the different kind of worldly pleasure, to just to make people happy.
Yeah, you certainly, like I say, it was quite an effort. It sounds like it was quite an effort. Pretty much self-financed, self-done. I know you've had some help, you've had people contribute a lot to it, but most of that 11 years, it was quite a solitary effort in some ways. And I think it's paid off. I think as far as its impact and meaning, and in the world, this is as a life work, I think you've pulled it off, my friend.
And at this point, between you and me, it doesn't matter who made it anymore to me. It just doesn't. Who cares? It's just there's of course, I always have an ego. You know, I am what I am, even though this is not really who I am. You know, as long as I'm alive, I would be always bounded by this suffering of self. I understand all this, but as far as this work goes, really, I don't want to tell people I'm a director of Carving the Divine and you know, you should admire me or anything. I don't care. I really don't. I wish I could like forget about Carving the Divine and turn back the time and do something different in life. That's like a honest opinion about it. I was like, Carving the Divine destroyed my life, and I don't really care about Carving the Divine, but it seems like other people cares. And if I die one day, and when I die one day, and if my work remains, and if everybody forgets about me, I think my spirit would be happy.
Excellent. I think that's a perfect place to leave it. We've gone for a full hour now, and I think I've you know that this project has already extracted enough from you. I don't want to extract any more from you. And so I think that's a perfect place to leave it. So thank you so very much for agreeing to do this interview. And I think I've really enjoyed speaking with you both prior to this and during our interview today. It's been a great privilege and great pleasure to have this discussion with you. And I wish you all the best and all the prosperity, and I hope that this work just keeps your work keeps becoming more meaningful and spreads in the world. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Namo Amida Butsu. All the best to you, my friend. Take care. Bye now.